You'll have to call again. I'm just leaving. I'm not dressed properly. My love is a people longing still for that which longer nurseth the disease. You'll have to call again. In faith, I do not love thee. With mine eyes they be 1,000 errors see. But 'tis my heart that loves what they despise. In despite of you are pleased to know. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? You'll have to call again. Darmok, Angelad, and Tanagra. Darmok, Angelad, and Tanagra. Darmok, Angelad, and Tanagra. Darmok, Angelad, and Tanagra. I am Locutus as a board. You will respond to my questions. I am Locutus as a board. You are bored. I am Locutus as a board. You will assist us. I am Locutus as a board.
You are bog.
I am Locutus as a board. Lock phases on that vessel. I am Locutus as a board. There are 4 lights. Captain Jean Picard of the USS Enterprise. Captain Jean Picard of the USS Enterprise.
I have to figure out a better way to like fade that out. Oh my god, best song ever. Welcome. We're here. We did it. I'm very excited. Alexa, hey, what's up in the chat? Damn right. I'm not the king. I am the captain. I can't do it, of course. It's so hard. Anyway, we're here. We're doing it. The inaugural live stream show stream. We're on youtube.com/TacasaFilm. We're on twitch.tv/rethinkfilms. We're all over the place. We're going everywhere. We got multiple chats. We got multiple alerts. We got lots of things. And we're here. Hello. Welcome. Carnage. Carnage doesn't... what's that face for? You don't like the stream? I mean, you don't like the song? What's that face for? It's too damn hot for this, so I'm taking it off. I just needed it for the dance. Oh. I am just new. Hello. Well, thanks for being here, Carnage. Throwing that away. What's your jam? Oh, we got something. What is that? Somebody's now following. It's too small. I can't see it. I need a better I'm still working out the stuff here. Idlewild. What's up, Idlewild? And the Twitch? Follow it on the Twitch. Nice. Thank you. Very, very nice of you. That's a cool name too, Idlewild. I like that. I need this is the first stream. This is the first real official stream. I did a test stream 2 weeks ago in preparation, but I'm still not done with the prepping. I redid all the lights, repositioned the camera. I took the windscreen off of this microphone because, like, why do I need a windscreen? There's not one iota of wind in here. There isn't any wind. So why would I need a windscreen? Plus, it's big. This thing is ugly, too. Look at this thing. It's like, it looks like something, it looks like I got dipped in acid. It's bad. So I figured there's no wind. I'll just go bare naked microphone right here. Hope you can hear me. Hope everything's good. Hope the sounds with everything's good. So, once again, welcome. Boulevard Bullies. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, can I get a hell yeah? Nice. I put a compressor on the audio, so if I yell, it should still be, it shouldn't peak. And if I whisper, it should be still kind of the same volume. Compressor. Pretty awesome. Speaking of this, we're going to... Oh, man. The ice melted. I was hoping for a nice, like, ASMR thing. Anyway. Lisa Rose. Lisa, hello. Thanks for joining. How are you? Carnage, Lisa, talk to me. what is your thing you're looking to learn? I've got what I was working on 2 weeks ago in Premiere right now. Or we could talk about photography. I'm not really too prepared for the photography, but I think I just might jump into the Premiere thing and just keep editing. But yeah, so since last time, since last time I completely redid my green screen. It's much more taut now. I redid the lighting. I'm hoping that this is going to be trouble to not have this like start to like key out. I'm going to need a new camera basically. But I hope the key looks a little bit better. I changed the backdrop. There's also a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. You might notice up here, right here, I've got a link to some Black Lives Matter resources. I posted an update video a couple days ago. I think it was Friday, saying that, I stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement and all that. And so 50% of the revenue for the streams this month will go to those causes. So if you want to super chat, which is like a one-time sort of tip you can do in the YouTube chat, that's cool. If you want to become a member on YouTube, that's awesome. I just launched memberships. Memberships is like Patreon in YouTube. You subscribe or you pay a monthly payment and you get perks. You can check out all the perks if you click the little join button. If you're watching on YouTube, there should be a join button below the screen. So you can check that out. There's lots of things there. If you're over on Twitch, we are, of course, Mr. Softy is coming around, of course. The ice cream truck's outside now, of course. If you're over on Twitch, we aren't monetized yet, so really the only thing you could do on Twitch is just give a follow. We're really looking to up our Rethink Twitch. So if you're watching on Twitch like Idlewild was, please follow. Yeah. Trying to think. I guess another thing I should say is that this full stream, if you can't see right here, this full entire unedited stream will be posted on that channel, my company's page. You won't be able to watch these streams, a rerun of these streams on this channel. You have to go to my Rethink Films channel, our company's channel, to watch these full streams. But I will be posting little nuggets from these streams onto Casa Film. Plus, anything I edit, I'm editing a thing right now. Once that thing's done, that'll be up onto Casa Film. But yeah, trying to take as much of the YouTube community and drive them towards my company's stuff, and this is the best way I can think to do it. Lisa Rose, my area of interest is mainly in videography as opposed to photography. That's cool. Mine is too. It's sort of an accident that this channel got super popular from photography type things. My DSLR basic settings tutorial is probably my second most popular video that's up on my channel. And the 3-point lighting is the most popular one. That has like, last I checked, it has like 1.6 million views, which is crazy. That one was for filmmaking, but this channel has garnered photography people. See, when I started this channel, DSLRs were like a brand new thing. So learning a DSLR was, a lot of people were buying DSLRs to learn how to do filmmaking on them and didn't really know how they worked because they were DSLRs and they didn't know all that stuff. I mean, before DSLRs, it was video cameras that had gain. DSLRs had ISO. Video cameras had a stock lens on it, so you didn't really care about f-stop, but DSLRs had interchangeable lenses. So it behooved people in like the 2008 to 2012 era to learn how to do photography because it would make your videography better with a DSLR. Matthew Hudson, found my way here through the 3-point lighting as well. Awesome. Yes, that is the most popular video I have. I'm glad it was very helpful. I've been like the last 2 weeks I've been on that channel, on that videos page, and I've been commenting on all the newest comments, being like, hey, I'm starting a stream. Hey, I'm starting a stream. And also like putting the cards, like the little things that pop up that says starting a stream, all that stuff. So, hey, Matthew, thanks for joining. Thanks for being here with me. So, yeah, Matthew, and Lisa, Carnage, just trying to kill a little bit of time, wait for some people to show up. Just looking around. Yeah, so this is awesome. The longer that we're on, the more people will hop in. But yeah, so I'm going to be streaming every Monday and Wednesday at 6 o'clock for about 2 to 3 hours. I mean, longer if we're on a roll. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be basically editing in Premiere. That's going to be like most of what I'm doing. Obviously, people can suggest things to do, but I will be editing in Premiere and just talking through it and explaining what I'm doing. But, you know, it's a place to come to ask me any questions. You might be working on a project. Come into the chat. You know, talk to me. I'll answer your question. Obviously, as the channel grows and as more and more viewers come in, then it'll be harder to answer everything in chat. But right now, you're with me on the ground level. You're here on the ground floor. So I'm going to take advantage. Please take advantage of that and ask me as much as you can. I do a lot of talking in these things, so I will also do a lot of drinking, which means I will do a lot of peeing. Not yet, though. Lisa Rose. The chat box should be popping up. I don't know why I'm not seeing the chat box on the screen. That is annoying. It should be there. Maybe I'm just not seeing it because it's small on my end. Lisa Rose, the way you explain things really sets you apart from other tutorial type videos. All the components used in the tutorial were clearly visible. Everything explained very well. Are you talking about the 3-point lighting? If so, thank you. Yeah. I go back. Those videos are pretty old. I go back and I watch them and I do cringe at a lot of things. In fact, I had to make an edit in the 3-point lighting one. You can't just like take down a video, make a change and put it back up and keep all your views. So, but recently YouTube has launched this editor browser feature where you can edit out sections of the video if you need to. And I had to edit out a part of the 3-point lighting tutorial because I just said something wrong. I said at one point, you know, these lights don't dim, they just go on and off. So the way to get less intense light is to push the light further away. The light also gets softer as you push it away, which really was incorrect. I don't remember if like I just didn't know what I was talking about at the time. I probably just didn't know what I was talking about at the time. The light gets harder as you push it away from you. And really, that's not really accurate to say. It's not really the light that gets harder, it's the shadows that get harder. So like, for instance, I'm being lit by kind of big, bright sources. And like, for instance, I don't know if you can see, this is going to be tough to do, but anyway, let's talk about this shadow on my chin. It's hard to find the edge of the shadow because the light is soft, because the source is big and close to me. But if I were to turn on my phone's light and point it at me, let's see, how am I going to do this? All right, look at the shadow. Yeah, look at the shadow here. Hard edge of the shadow right there. There's the softness of the light is depends on the size of the source of the light relative to you. So if you have a giant window next to you and you stand right next to it, it's a big source, the shadows will be soft. If you walk away from that window, obviously that source of light will get smaller and smaller relative to you. So the smaller the source of light is relative to you, it could be really big in real life. It could be a 10-foot window in real life. But if you're, 300 yards away, it'll be kind of small. So the smaller the source of light is, the harder the edges of the shadows appear on you. And so when you push a light further away, the source gets smaller, becomes more pin spot, becomes more of a pin, more pin spotty, and therefore that changes the hardness of the lines of the shadows. So a lot of the time, when you watch a photographer work or a cinematographer work, they're going to try to put like a giant softbox relatively close to the subject to make the shadows really, really nice. Yeah. Matthew Hudson. We just set up a studio with a green screen. Any helpful tips for lighting green screens? N9 Studio's in the thing. Okay, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. N9's been commenting on a lot of my stuff, so thank you. Sorry if you hear Mr. Softy again. You know what's so funny, Matthew? While I adjusted my seat. What's really funny? Whoop, my chair. Hang on. Oh my god. We're doing it live. I gotta get one of those better. I gotta get one of those dope like gaming chairs. You know what's crazy, Matthew, is that this coming Wednesday before my live stream, I'm actually being hired as a consultant, and I'm going to Brooklyn to meet up with a production company, or I have to do a little bit more research as to what they do. But excuse me, soda burp. We're doing it live, and I'm meeting up with them live, and you know, it's a paid gig to tour their space, and they want to shoot stuff on a green screen. So they're getting the like ultimate, you know, consultation. You know, I'm going there, I'm looking at the space, and I'm going to be talking about green screen and lighting and stuff like that. Tips for green screen. Don't do what I'm doing right now. I could literally reach back and touch my green screen. I'm touching it right now. It's probably like 2.5 feet behind me. I have a small apartment, so I don't have a lot of room to work with, but you want to put as much space between the subject and the green screen as you can, and you want to light the green screen separately from the lights that are on you. I'm not really happy with my whole setup in here. You can see there's still like stuff here. Also, this camera is an old camera, and it's because of the settings, it's cropped in and there's pretty grainy. Urka Jerk with the Twitch follow. Thank you. I know Urka Jerk. Urka Jerk is awesome. Thank you so much. So you want to separate the subject from the green screen as far as you can, you know, being reasonable. You want to light the green screen evenly from both sides. You want to have this. You want to have like no shadows. The green screen should be very taut if it's a cloth material, or it should be a paper, so that there's no wrinkles, no as you want to minimize the shadow gradients as much as you can. You want to have it pretty well lit and no shadows, but you should probably also light your subject a little bit brighter than the background. You also need a pretty decent camera. Obviously, this camera kind of sucks for this because it's just auto iris. I need to get a better camera for this. You want to, you know, have a manual camera, low grain. You know, you don't want a high ISO. Yeah, that's about it. That's about all I can think of at the moment. There are a lot of good tutorials out there. I mean, I would rather have you talk to me about it, but there are a lot of good tutorials out there for green screen setups. Lisa Rose, it's evergreen content though, useful no matter the time or equipment used. My first setup consisted of no professional gear, just table and floor lamps. Nice. Yeah, professional gear is, well, at least it was very expensive. Like nowadays, you could go on Amazon and like get like some pretty cheap, like knockoff, you know, foreign brands for relatively cheap. Will it last you forever? Is it built really good? Will they break if you sneeze on it? Probably. But like back in the day, back like even like 10 years ago, the only place you could get that stuff from was like from a few certain manufacturers and a few certain companies that sold them, like B&H, and you know, there were no cheap knockoffs back in the day. You had to like spend the money, and even like the stupidest, smallest things, like a little plate for a tripod or something, was like astronomical. It was crazy. But now you can go on Amazon. I feel like my camera's shaking, and that's annoying me. I'm gonna try to fix that. So now you can go on Amazon and find some cheaper stuff. Yeah, if there's anything else you want to ask me, feel free to ask in the chat, Twitch chat or YouTube chat. Patrick, if you're watching, is the chat coming up in the stream? My chat box is on the screen, but it doesn't seem to be coming up. Ryan Greer, what's up? What are current cameras and lenses that you recommend for photography and videography? That is probably the most common question I've gotten over the past like 10 years that this channel has been up. Everyone says, what cameras and what lenses do you recommend? And I always say, get what you can afford. Because obviously I would recommend an Arri Ultra Prime or Master Prime, you know, but a 50 millimeter Arri Master Prime is probably like $6,000 for one lens. That's just one lens. I mean, that's the best lens that exists. There's probably a couple other ones out there that maybe rival it. But obviously I can't recommend that because it's too damn high. The price is too damn high. Lisa Rose, I'm interested in learning more about bokeh effects in video. Best equipment, lenses, settings, distance from the background. That's a little bit better of a question because at least there's a goal in mind. When you say, like, what are current cameras and lenses that you recommend for photography and videography? Ones you can afford, you know? It's not necessarily like the gear that's going to make good photos. It's the person using it. They're just tools. That's like saying, hey, I want to make a really nice painting. What do you think the best brushes are? You know, obviously the brushes have something to do with the quality of the painting, and the paint, you have crappy paint, it's going to be harder to make it. But like at the end of the day, you could have the most expensive paint and the most expensive brushes. Are you going to make a masterpiece? Not necessarily. Whereas learning more about bokeh effects or bokeh effects in video, best equipment, lenses, settings, distance from the background, that's a damn good question. Lisa, I'll talk a little bit about it. Thanks, Urka Jerk. Okay, nice. Yeah, I mean, the chats aren't coming super quick, but there should be, right here, there should be the YouTube chat, and right here, there should be the Twitch chat. Or I should say, right there. And then the Twitch would be like right there. So bokeh or bokeh, what is that? That is when I mean, I haven't looked up the word in a while, but the way I describe it is the quality of the out of focus areas of a photo or video. Hang on. Oh, cool. Twitch was telling me I achieved something or whatever. So the bokeh is like, it's not just the fact that the background is out of focus, it's the quality of that out of focus area. What about the out of focus area is interesting, pretty, aesthetically pleasing, aesthetically not pleasing? So that's what bokeh like refers to, the quality of the out of focus areas. So obviously there are certain things that happen at different sort of f-stops too. So like, I love watching like I love watching like a movie or looking at a photo and seeing like little Christmas lights in the background. They're like out of focus. You can kind of tell like what f-stop they were at because the shape of the out of focus lights. Now keep in mind they're Christmas lights, so they're very small lights. They're a pin spot. So as they go out of focus, the light is coming to the camera and getting out of focus, and it starts to mimic the shape of the lens, the elements in the lens, specifically the aperture. So if you see an out of focus Christmas light in the background that looks like a hexagon or an octagon or a pentagon, then you know that the f-stop that they were using is pretty closed down because you're seeing the edges of the blades of the aperture come together. Although it's kind of hard to have nice bokeh with a closed down aperture because the more closed your aperture is, the more depth of field, the more things will be in focus. So usually when you see those Christmas lights out of focus in the background, they're almost always a circle. Sometimes they have a couple of edges. They might have a little edge on them, like kind of like a stop sign, but more rounded. But most of the time they're a circle because that f-stop is wide open. So there's really no blades coming. There's no blades coming in to block the light. It's just the blades are out of the way, and it's just a barrel right to the sensor. Are documentaries or short films more fun to create? I'll answer that in a second. I want to go back to bokeh because I like talking about bokeh. Distance from the background. Yeah, so obviously if the background is farther away, it's going to be more out of focus because depth of field, like if this is the person taking the photo going this way, and this is the environment, depending on what aperture you're at, you're going to see anywhere, like, it's hard to explain, like anywhere from like 2 feet to like 3 feet, that segment will be in focus. And as you turn down the f-stop, that segment of things that whatever's in between 2 feet and 3 feet, or whatever's in that magic area between you and the subject or the horizon, that's going to be in focus. So as you turn the iris down, and you're getting a smaller and smaller aperture, that segment, that depth of your field is getting wider and wider until it hits a point where everything's in focus. If you get really, really small, like pinhole f-stop, everything's going to be in focus. There are a lot of really good videos out there that explain this. Minute Physics has a really good one explaining why the pinhole creates a infinity focus. You're nice. That's cool, Lisa. I think I'm going to have to move on, though. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Obviously, lenses, you want to have a lens that has as wide of an aperture as possible for bokeh effects. Cheaper lenses usually don't have as wide of an aperture because they can be made smaller. If a lens is made smaller, there's less glass in it, and it's a smaller thing. There isn't a lot of it to manufacture, so it's smaller. So a cheaper lens will have like an f4 or an f5.6 as its widest aperture. You'll see like a cheap zoom lens. You might see like Canon has a pretty cheap zoom lens. It's like a $400 lens, but Canon has a lens that's like 28 to 135. So fairly good zoom lens. But when you're at 28 millimeters, when you're at the widest, it's an f3.5, and as you zoom in, the iris, because of the way the lens is working, when you're zoomed in, you're at a f5.6. So that's why it's cheaper. You're not going to be able to get like really, shallow focus with those lenses because you need a wide aperture. Whereas like Canon has like a prime lens, a 50 millimeter 1.2. And if you're all the way open, 50 millimeter 1.2, that's like, take a photo of someone, their eye will be in focus and their ear will be out of focus. It's crazy. My favorite f-stop is f2 because it's just enough of a depth of field to get like most of the face in focus and everything behind it is pretty out. So if you're doing like portraits with photography, Canon has an 85 1.2 lens, I think, or 85 1.4 L series. The lens is like this big at the end of it, and shoot someone like waist up, f2, pretty good. Richard Care, hello again. Glad to see you posting. Thank you. I'm back. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. I've been talking and talking to chat a lot, but I do have a project that we can get in and I can start editing. But I'm just having fun interacting with you guys and girls. The more I talk, the more I got to sip. Let me just clear my throat. Okay. Ryan Greer says, yeah. Are documentaries or short films more fun to create? I mean, it depends on who you are. It depends on the type of person you are. I know people who are like documentary people, so they like shooting docs, and they find that to be more fun. But I know people who like to shoot a film, and they find that more fun. It really just depends on your taste. Personally, if you're asking me personally, I like short films more. for a few reasons. Honestly, a short film's easier. Short film, it's like you have the idea, you script it out, you write it, and then you basically just have this puzzle in front of you, and then you go shoot the puzzle pieces and you put it together. Whereas with and then plus, like, it's a little bit easier because you're shooting less footage. It's like you know what you want to, you know what the idea is, you know what the shots are. So maybe you get like 1 or 2 takes of each, and then you put it in the thing and you edit it and you're good. Maybe you can have fun in the editing and move things around. But a documentary, for me, there's such more of an X factor because you're dealing with like live things. So there's a lot you can get into, but for the most part, I don't want to like shoot myself in the foot by saying stuff like this, but like for the most part, like you don't have a lot of control. Some directors, like I was saying, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, but some documentary filmmakers like do manipulate a little bit. If I was going to do a documentary, I would be very standoffish. I would be very voyeuristic. I wouldn't want to like manipulate or interfere with what's going on. But that not every filmmaker is like that with a documentary. Whether or not they show themselves manipulating or interfering is one thing or not. Plus, with a documentary, there's a lot more footage. I think like if a doc, there's like a ratio of how much raw footage there is to the final film. So let's say you have a 5-minute short film. I think I heard like maybe 3-1 or 5-1. Let's say 5-1. Let's be generous. Excuse me. If you have a 5-minute short film, then theoretically you should only really need to shoot 25 minutes worth of raw footage. If you have a 5-minute documentary, it's like 10-1. You would have 50 minutes, double or more. You could have hours of footage to be able to put together just a 5-minute documentary, depending on what you're filming. So that's just so much more work. And plus, with me at least, with a documentary, the structure kind of comes after the fact. Like for me, a lot of documentaries I've worked on or like been a part of is just like, we're just going to go out there and shoot. Obviously the thing is cool that we're filming. That's why we're filming it. But then you get all this footage and you look at it all and then it's like, how do we put this together? What's the best way? And it's a lot of thinking about that in post. Whereas with a short film, it's all in your head. You have the idea, you have the story, you write down the story and you're just making the story. I feel like documentaries take so much longer. Amanita. What's up, Amanita? Personal friend of mine. It's good to see you. Holy shit. I did not expect to see you. That's awesome. Any tips on maintaining focus while filming extreme close-ups, e.g. for creating online tutorials, painting miniatures? Are you doing that, Amanita? If you are, plug that shit. Sheku Sharif is back. You were here for my test stream. That's awesome. And your name is in the trailer that I made for this stream. I was like, what's up, Sheku? Thanks for being here. Kegan we've been working hard on creating content. Very difficult to film close up. Yeah, depending on how close up you're going, you want to have a lens that has something called a macro feature. You would think it would be called micro, but it's called macro. So I don't know if you're filming, I don't know what you're filming on, if you're filming with a DSLR or anything, but like if you have a lens that has a macro setting or a macro lens, that is the kind of lens that you would use to film really close-up stuff. And here's a good trick, Amanita. If you are filming on a DSLR, you can take the lens off and turn the lens the other way and put it up against the camera. And that will turn the lens into a macro lens. They also sell, if you're using a DSLR, you can find like, turn any lens into macro lens adapter or something, and they'll sell specifically for your camera a thing that you screw into the front of the lens, screw into the front of it, then you take the lens, turn it backwards, and then attach it back into your camera. It takes a little bit of playing with it, with the focus and like the distance from the object, but you can take some really sick close-ups with that. In fact, I am going to show you. I'm going to show you one. I used to have. Oh wait, sorry, wrong one. I used to have a Instagram. I'm planning on like revitalizing it, but I used to have an Instagram where it was all of my photography. So like, here's an example. Give me 1 second and I'll show you. So here's a macro shot that I shot using that exact technique I was talking about. This spider, oh, here it is. Last night while playing with my new telescope, this little gal was chilling on the patio with us. I took out my 50mm f1.4 and did this trick I learned years ago where you can make it function like a macro by flipping it backwards. Then I put my 5D Mark III on rapid fire and took 5 or 6 photos while moving slowly towards her. Then I did something in Photoshop called focus stacking, which is a specific to photography. You can't do that with videography. But basically, this image is taken of many images at as I was moving towards it, different parts of it were getting more and more in focus. And I forget how to do it offhand. I'd have to look up a tutorial. But you can then take all of those photos, put them in Photoshop, and Photoshop analyzes them, aligns them, and then only finds the sharp edges of the focus points, and then combines them all together into one image. Here's another one, like this one. This was actually probably like 13 or 14 photos where like the head of the caterpillar was in focus, and then this part of it was in focus, then this part, and then this part, and this part, and this part. And I did the same trick, except with a longer zoom lens, and did the same thing with the photo stacking. So this type of image is not possible with video. I can show you another example. Actually, I can show you another example of macro in video, and that is on my my company's website. So give me 1 second while I find that. It's going to be a second. I can't use the songs from it. In fact, I'm going to make sure that my desktop audio is turned off. But so let's just go live here like this. I'm going to mute this. I mean, I turned off my desktop audio so you can't hear it, but so here's a video I did for Tweezerman with my company. Obviously, it's small things. I thought I was going to be using the macro lens a little bit more, but for this one we didn't do the lens flip around trick. For this one we got a macro lens because we knew we were going to be filming small things. Here it is. Here's the shot right there. So that's the tweezer, being looked at obviously through this guy's. He's got a loop that he's looking at the tweezer, but we're not shooting through that loop. This shot right here is with a 100mm macro L series Canon macro lens, but you can see it was very low light in there. It was pretty dark in there. So we're at very open f-stop. I think it's an f2.8 lens. So you can see, look at that. Look how shallow that depth of field is. And think about it, it's a tweezer. So what is that? Between the closest thing to us, which is this flat edge, and where it goes out of focus, in real life, what is that, 2 millimeters? And obviously this one is good. Oh wait, this is a shorter version. There's one where it's a bad tweezer. But anyway, that's such a cool shot though. Look at that. But I mean, like, look, as you get further and further out here, I mean, it's like, it's nothing. It's like you might as well just have no lens on the camera. Oh my God, I forgot about the chat. Martin, what's up, Martin? I recognize you because of your profile picture of Cleveland. So yeah, isn't that sick though? That's using a macro lens. I'm gonna go back to this. Any tips on maintaining focus while filming extreme close-ups? A tripod. You want to be on a tripod. Yeah. And if you're doing an extreme close-up of something, that thing should be static. They do sell, if you're really trying to get really crazy, they do sell sort of like plates that go on your tripod that have like a wheel. It's for doing exactly that. It's for doing these like photo stacking. So what you do, or like product shots where, like, let's say you wanted to get a shot like this with a tweezer and you wanted it that big. You would have to set up the tweezer on a thing. You have to set up the camera and put it on one of these plates. And it's basically the wheel. There's two pieces. There's like the part that sits in the tripod, and then there's this like sort of centerpiece that can go back and forth. And there's like gears. And as you turn the wheel, it moves the plate forward like a millimeter at a time or less. So you would take a photo, turn the wheel, and move the plate forward. You take the photo, move the plate wheel, and so over time, the thing moves forward. That way you don't have to like move the tripod the whole time. It's a very precise tool for doing photo stacking. And then you put it in Photoshop and stack it and you get a cool image. But it depends on exactly like how small you're doing. I mean, for the most part, if you're filming like, you know, little Dungeons and Dragons characters that are like an inch and a half tall, a pretty decent zoom lens should be fine. I would say at least 100 millimeters or more. Maybe if you can get a 200 millimeter, somewhere between 100 and 200 millimeters. The thing with a zoom lens, if it doesn't have a macro setting, then you're not going to be able to get very close to it. Like there's a minimum focus distance with things. So it's kind of like hard unless you have the thing in front of you. Like if you have a 200 millimeter zoom lens, obviously you can zoom in, you know, a lot. But if the minimum focus distance is 5 feet, then that's not going to do much good. Because if the thing is so small that you're trying to film, you can't get within 5 feet of it. So even if you're 5 feet away and you zoom in, it's still going to be pretty small. Whereas there are different minimum focus lenses. I would say anywhere from like 2 feet and closer of a minimum focus difference, minimum focus distance, anywhere from like 2 feet away or closer, or really 1.5 feet or 1 foot and closer. If there's anywhere from 1.5 feet or smaller than that of a minimum focus distance, that's like a macro lens pretty much, you know? So like, for instance, the shot of the tweezer here. If I had a guess, I would say we were probably 8 inches away from it in real life. So like if this is if my microphone here is the edge of the lens, we were about that far away from it in real life. If we were to have gotten closer to it, it's a macro lens. It has a minimum focus distance of probably like an inch or two away from the lens. Although maybe not. Maybe this was the minimum focus distance. Knowing myself, I probably wanted to get as close to that tweezer as I could. So that probably is 8 inches probably was the minimum focus distance. I could be wrong though. I don't remember. This shot is 5 years old. So I don't really remember. Also, like if I knew we were going to be talking about macro stuff, I probably would have prepped a little bit more. But it's all good. Let me catch up on the chat here. Thanks everyone for watching and joining. I will eventually get into the editing, unless you just want to keep chatting. If you hear my neighbors, they're screaming outside for some reason. Okay. Sorry, she was a good friend of mine, so I really went ham on explaining the macro stuff. Martin said, sorry, I'm late, teacher. No problemo. You have detention, though, so I'll see you after class. Ryan Greer, what is your favorite film so far this year? Well, I haven't really watched a lot of new films. I don't think I've seen any new films this year. I'm trying to think. I really don't think I've seen any new films. And I still have favorite films of all time. I just saw Catch Me If You Can again. I've seen that movie like 20 times. So I'll say Catch Me If You Can because that movie's so good. Martin, only getting 720p here in the UK. Do you mean of this stream? You're only getting 720p of this stream? That's actually a good thing. I'm glad you're getting that because that's the highest resolution I'm outputting. I'm simulcasting right now. I'm going to my Dacasa Film channel, but I'm also going to my Rethink Films, my company, the company that shot that tweezer video. I'm also simulcasting to my Rethink Films Twitch right now. And because that channel is basically starting out and we only have like 3 or 4 followers, that channel does not have a lot of features activated. And so because of that, on that channel, if I were to broadcast at 1080, that's the only option that people would get to see. Only channels on Twitch that have a lot of followers and have unlocked all of the features, only those channels have the feature where you can select which resolution you want to watch. So if you go to a very popular Twitch channel and you want to watch it and you're in 1080p and it's like, oh, my internet's going a little slow, I can't handle the 1080, let me bump down to 720, you can. Or hey, you can bump down to 480 or 360. But on a lower channel, on a smaller channel like ours right now, you'd only have 1080. So if anyone was going to watch this stream and their internet was kind of crappy, they'd be screwed. They wouldn't be able to watch because the 1080 is the only thing they're getting and they can't select anything else. So for that reason, I've limited the resolution output of the streams to 720 so that it reaches a wider audience. Kind of a long answer for something you wouldn't even think was a thing. But I have been prepping for streaming for like 6 months. I was doing streams on my own channel, doing video games. I had to buy a new PC because my Mac didn't cut it. It's been tens and tens of hours. I wouldn't say hundreds, but it's been a long time coming for this stream, and I've done a lot of work. Amanita says again, I've confirmed that we have a macro lens, 55 to 200 millimeter. Kegan has issues with the depth of field because the camera will often try to focus on his hands as he's painting. I would turn the autofocus off. Absolutely turn the autofocus off. Put it on a tripod. Get the thing that you're trying to stay in focus in a spot. Don't move it around too much if you can. Turn off the autofocus on the camera and set that focus. Definitely. If you can. Another thing you see a lot is like, I've seen like a lot of makeup artists do videos, right? And they have autofocus on. So I've seen a trick where they're like, hey, check out this cool eyeliner that I got. And they'll go like this because they want you to see the thing. But look, it's not in focus. They really want you to see like the tip of it, but it's not in focus because I'm in focus. But there is a trick you can do where you could just put your hand up to it. Now, I'm actually pushing the minimum focus distance of this camera. But by putting your hand behind the thing, now it forces the camera to do an autofocus. See, now it's auto irising on me. You're forcing the camera to autofocus because everything in the frame now is at that distance. So if you are going to do autofocus, you have to be careful. Like the brain in the camera is going, okay, how much of what's in this frame is out of focus? Okay, it's more than 50%. Okay, because I was focused further away, now that more than 50% of the stuff in my frame is out of focus, I'm just going to assume it's closer to me now. So now let me back the focus up so that it's closer to me, and then it'll hit you there. If that doesn't work, if it goes all the way and it's like, well, we're at the end of the lens now, it's not in focus, maybe it was further away, and then it'll go further away. So you start to see it like strobing, where it's like, we can't find focus. Where are you? Prince Havoc now following on Twitch. Hey, thanks, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, get those rethink follows up. Anyway, so yeah, that's a little trick with that. Is there an equivalent of focus stacking for video? No. The only thing that you can do is make your aperture as small as you can, which means you need a lot of light. So if you are doing a macro shot and you want to have it as in focus as possible, then you want to turn the iris all the way down. The f-stop should be a large number. So like, this is an aperture and a lens. This would be like an f4 or an f2. As you go f4, f5.6, f8, f11, f16, so like the smaller the hole, the more focus you're going to be in. But with shots that are very close up and zoomed in, even with a small aperture, it's still going to be pretty shallow. There's not really much you can do there. So that being said, do it anyway. Make the f-stop as small as possible, but obviously the smaller your iris, the darker the less light it's letting in. So you need to really pour light. The cool thing about shooting something so small is that you can get a light source within inches of it. You can put a light here. I mean, if you're only filming something that's this big, you can put the light right here. And so, relatively speaking, that's going to be super bright. So you can turn the iris down if you put the light source super duper close. So that's probably your best bet, but it's still not going to be, it's not going to be as crystal clear as you can think in your head. The only other thing I can think of is not using a DSLR. There might be like just whole cameras that you can think of that are better at close-up photography. So instead of thinking about the lens for close-up, you might want to think about the camera itself, because think about it. You have a lens. If you close the iris down, you're going to be more and more in focus. But the sensor of that camera, the image capturing sensor is of a DSLR, they can be pretty big. They can be around the size of a 35 millimeter frame, which is 35 millimeters diagonally. So they can be about pretty big. So the depth of field is going to be related to the sensor size, because it's got to cover the sensor. So the aperture is going to be as at least big as that. I mean, there are lenses on the other side of the aperture to expand that out. So, but still, that's part of the issue. Whereas a camera that's on your phone, the sensor in the phone is not a 35 millimeter sensor. The sensor on the phone is like a quarter of an inch or less, an eighth of an inch sensor. I mean, it's 1080p, or some of them are 4K now, but they're very, very small. So because they're small, there's really no way to get bokeh. There is really no way to get a large aperture or a lot of depth of field with a small sensor, because the sensor's already so small. That's why, like, before the DSLR era, when people were shooting on video cameras, you could never get a beautiful out of focus shot with a video camera because the sensor was so small. It was like 3/4 of an inch. So that might actually work to your benefit, shooting macro stuff. If you want more of it in focus, you might want to think about shooting it on your phone, or shooting it on, they sell lenses for phones. You can get a zoom lens for a phone. You also want to think about then getting something to mount the phone like this. I have one of these things. My phone is so thick with 2 C's. But look, you can get these things that go on the phones, and it has tripod mounting here, here, and there. You know, you can mount it this way, mount it this way. This one also has a little stand. You could stand the phone up. This little mount. Ooh, I almost shut my phone off because it was hitting the button. This little mount, I think I got this for like $10 at Micro Center. So if you have a cheap tripod, one of these, get one of those weird zoom lenses. I don't know. I'd be interested to find out if that actually helps. You would think like, oh, I should get a really good camera, but like, maybe. I'm so behind. Let's see. And you look slightly blue or green. Yeah, I am slightly blue. I'm not super happy with this setup. So my lights that I'm using to light the green screen are daylight balanced, and the lights that are lighting up me are tungsten balanced. So I got to fix that, but I didn't have time. I literally changed the lights around on Saturday because I wanted a good key behind me. If I didn't do it, the key would be even shittier than it is right now. But it is what it is. At some point, as the streams go on and as I improve, I will equalize the lighting so I won't look blue anymore. But for now, yeah. Thanks for pointing it out, though. It's true. Amanita says beautiful. I'm assuming you mean about that tweezer shot. Lisa Rose, wow. I'm assuming you mean about the tweezer shot. Richard Kerr, 1-to-1 ratio on the sensor. I don't know what that means or what we're referring to. Amanita, the tip on minimum focus distance is gold. That explains why our lens hasn't been focusing well. Yeah, I remember the day I learned that. I was shooting a wedding. Well, I wasn't shooting a wedding. I was working on a wedding. It had been maybe like 3 months I was working at this, or more, maybe 6 months. I was working at a wedding photography place that had video. And this is 2003, 2004. So we're talking those big broadcast cameras. And it was the day that we went to a park. It was a really hot summer day. We went to a park, and they let me play with the second camera. So the main videographer was shooting the bride and groom, you know, getting the video, and they just let me play around with the camera. And this is like, as a film, I was going to film school at the time, so to play around with like a $20,000 camera was really cool. And I remember I was like on the ground, I was trying to get really cool stuff, and I was like this close to a flower, and I'm like, I was all the way focused up. I was like as far as I could go, and I'm like, but I had it framed up nicely. I wanted the shot to be that close. And I was like, I said, Marty, why isn't the shot in focus? Like, I can't get it in. He was like, you okay there, son? You okay there, pal? And I was like, I can't get it in focus. And he was just like, you're too close. And I was like, oh. So I like backed up, and I kept the focus locked as like at the minimum distance. And I just slowly backed up until it was in focus. I was like, oh, it makes sense. But it was I remember that happening because that's like, oh, I'm too close. So yeah, and at that point, now that I'm in focus, I start zooming in. So now I'm here, but then I'm zooming in. But what happens? I'm zooming in. It's out of focus again. So now I got to back up a little bit more. Oh, but I still not close enough. So I zoom in, and it's a little out of focus. I got to back up a little bit more. So your minimum focus distance is related to your focal length. The focal length is how zoomed in you are. The focal length is referring to the last element of the lens. So if this is the lens, the back, we're shooting this way, the back element of the lens, how far away that is from the sensor plane, from the film. So at 10 millimeters, you're pretty close, and you're therefore going to see a lot. But if the back element is 200 millimeters, 20 centimeters, right, then you're zoomed in. You're going to it's further away. That's your focal length, and therefore your field of view changes. Yeah. So depending on your focal length, your minimum distance might change, depending on the lens. There are different lenses. Oliver Campbell Smith. What a name. Oliver Campbell Smith. I like that. Hi, I've never watched a live stream before. I have seen a few of your videos. Firstly, congratulations on your streaming after all your prep. Secondly, could you channel Batman again? Wow. Old school. This is the mic. This is the mic from that video, my friend. Well, thank you for coming. I am, or was, or will, or whatever. I am going to edit at some point, but I'm very much just having fun talking to you guys. So unless you guys say, yeah, start editing, then I'll keep talking. But, this is a lot of fun for me. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Really appreciate it. Got 10 people watching, a lot of people chatting, 3 people in Twitch. Super cool. Very excited. So you've never watched a live stream before. Thanks for being here. A lot of people who've never watched a live stream before don't like to chat. So I appreciate that you took the time to chat. Thank you for congratulating me on the prep. It has been a lot of prep. And thirdly, I'm Batman. I'm Batman. I'm Batman. It's probably a little bit deeper since then. I've gotten older. But if you don't know, I have a video called Filmmaking 101, How to Record Audio, High Quality Audio on a Budget. And the video opens up with a stuffed Batman. Excuse me, you probably heard that. It opens up with a Batman, and it's just like, I'm Batman. And then it continues from there. Because I didn't have anybody to help me, so I had Batman help me. Richard, lots of light and high f-stop for more depth of field. Yes, that's true. Oliver Campbell Smith. Also, what do you recon on using Aperture AI f7 as your key light if you're traveling? Do you mean recommend? What do you recommend? What do you recon on using Aperture AI f7 as your key light if you're traveling? I don't know what that light is. So I don't know if you are allowed to post links in the chat. I might have to eventually kind of figure out a way to do that. But if you can post a link, give it a try to like what that light is, like the B&H page or something, and I'll take a look at it. Chetta XOX14. Hey, I found your channel through Salty Sugar Plum. I am a multimedia journalist fresh out of college, and I am so glad I found your channel. I've learned so much in your videos. Oh my God. That's amazing. Maybe I'll have Victoria come say hi, but I did not prep her for that. So Salty Sugar Plum is my fiance. She does ballet tutorials, and I appear in a few of them, and sometimes I appear in her live streams. But if you see me in a live stream that's on her channel, we only talk about dance and ballet. I won't be able to talk about filmmaking or photography unless I'm drinking. Well, thank you so much for being here, Chetta. Everyone who's in the chat, if you haven't already subscribed, that would be awesome. Subscribed on YouTube, that is. If you guys do go to Twitch, please follow on Twitch. But that's all I'm asking for. If you really like what you're seeing and you really want to support, you could always super chat if you want. Up to you. Obviously, if you see up here, 50% of everything goes to Black Lives Matter, so you'll be helping them as well. Up to you. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, there is a little join button down below. The join button will bring up a page that shows like monthly payments, different tiers and different perks for each tier. There's a little video that I put there. You can watch that at some point. You can watch it now, after the video, after the stream, whatever. Also, keep in mind below, this whole stream will be on Rethink Films YouTube page, so please go subscribe there. If you are watching on Twitch, it will just be on the Twitch page too, so I got to make sure it doesn't get deleted because they get deleted after a while. Macro level is 1-to-1 for the beginning of macro. To be honest, I don't really know what that means. 1-to-1. So what does that mean exactly? I got to look that up. Macro level is 1-to-1. I don't quite understand what that means. It's like right on the tip of my brain. Like I'm almost understanding what you're talking about. And once if you can explain it, then I'll understand it and it'll click and then I'll get it. But like right now, it's just like, because I haven't done macro stuff in a while. That's like a whole subgenre of photography and cinematography that like, obviously I don't have all the answers to everything. Oliver Campbell Smith, funny emoji. Cheers for that. You can take it out in the edit later. Yep, no worries. Martin, the Batman video, was that one about framing the boom mic out of the shot? Well, it wasn't about that, but that was something that definitely appears in the video. In fact, that's why my windscreen here that I took off the mic, that's why the windscreen looks like poop, because that piece of tape, see, you can still see the remnants of that piece of tape. It was falling apart. It became crusty and weird, and I eventually had to just cut it off because it was just like looking like poop. But I don't really need this because there's no wind in here, so I took it off. It's a lower profile. A bug is the size of a bug on the sensor. 1-to-1, actual size, as in real life. Huh. That's interesting. But what if you have a zoom lens? Like, I guess if it's wouldn't that have to do with what focal length you're at? I could understand if like you have a 35mm sensor and you have a 35mm macro, then that makes sense to me. But if you increase the focal length to, let's say, 50, 100mm, then wouldn't that change the ratio? So I don't understand, like, I don't understand where, like, at what point is it 1-to-1 and at what point does it change? That's the question that I have. Or is that just what the definition of macro means? Macro, like, just that term means macro? That gets beyond my pay grade, yeah. Maybe that's just what the term macro, like, refers to. It's like, because it's making the small, I don't know. It all starts to get a little confusing after a while. Cool. So we've been streaming for an hour, which is great. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a short break to pee, like I said I was. And then when we come back, I will either keep answering the things that I see in chat, or I'm going to hop into Adobe Premiere and we could talk about editing. You could ask me questions about editing. And I'll explain what that's all about. So right now I am going to, do you want the song? I kind of want to do the song again. I'm going to do the song. So I'm going to play the song here, but you can't hear it. And I will be right back.
decided to ramble on about something everyone knows. Captain Jean Picard of the USS Enterprise. Captain Jean Picard of the USS Enterprise. Make it so. Make it so. Make it so. Make it so. He just kept talking in one long, incredibly unbroken sentence, moving from topic to topic so that no one had the chance to interrupt. It was really quite hypnotic. Incredibly unbroken sentence, moving from topic to topic, quite hypnotic. You'll have to call again. I'm just leaving. I'm not dressed properly. My love is a creeper, longing till for that which longer nurseth let me see. You'll have to call again. In faith, I do not love thee. With mine eyes they be 1,000 errors see. But 'tis my heart that loves what they despise. In despite of you, please, to know shall I compare thee to a summer's day.
Hello. I'm back. Checked in with the fiance. She's watching a show called Botched. Anybody watch Botched? It's about two plastic surgeons who fix people who had botched plastic surgeries. It's pretty good. We call it garbage TV. It's like mindless TV that we like to watch. Okay, so I don't see any more messages in the chat. Hopefully not everyone left while I peed. Thank you again for being here. Once again, you could check out memberships. You could do a super chat if you want, but at the very least, consider subscribing on YouTube to be notified when I'm live, or just to be notified when I put out a video. And if you're over on Twitch, definitely give a follow there. That's all you can do there for now, but we're going to grow Twitch as time goes on. Yeah, all right, we're going to hop into editing. So here we are. This is, I'm picking up from where I left off. Wait a minute. Let me turn on the TV. Hang on. We're picking up from where I left off 2 weeks ago when I was editing this. This is a show that only one episode of got released on my channel. It's called Tell Us Damn It. Me and my business partner Cody invited friends, acquaintances, people in the film industry to come to the YouTube space, and we interviewed them. Now we sat. It was my decision. I wanted this setup where they're in the middle and me and Cody are on either side of them. It's sort of it is supposed to feel semi like interrogation style, but also it's a couch, so it's fun. And yeah, so this is Rita. She is an assistant director, and throughout this video she talks about it. So we can see here where it's a long interview. We talked for an hour. We set the timer. We talked for an hour. I have 3 cameras, and I'm jumping between them, trying not to show any jump cuts. I don't want this to be a jump cutty kind of a thing. So you can see we're about halfway through. Yeah. So we're going to pick up where we left off, and I'm going to explain what I'm doing as we go. And the cool thing is that when this gets done, it's going to go up on Dacasa Film, which is cool. So it's like I'm streaming myself making content, and that is content in itself. Ryan Greer, what is your advice to anyone who's working on a project from development to post-production? That's a pretty general question. What is my advice to anyone who's working on a project from development to post-production? What is your role in the project? What are you doing in the role? Is it a team you're working with, or is it just you? I'll get back to that question, but we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
That's great.
The other thing that an AD needs to do is
Also, keep in mind, this is a very computer-heavy thing I'm doing. Editing, streaming, multiple things, all sorts of stuff. So if it skips and it's acting weird, please forgive me.
based on the job. Like,
Let me back up a little bit and sort of catch up as to where we are.
Sometimes you gotta rev into
yeah, if I'm having a problem with someone, my go-to line, and I kind of like this one,
Yeah.
and I truly believe in it, is like, I'm not going to tell another adult what to do more than twice.
Plus, at that point, it's like they know,
Yeah.
they're just not doing
Yeah.
it.
That was a shitty edit, but like that's probably the best I could do.
Twice.
Plus, at that point, it's like
I could probably throw in an audio transition here. I wish I could do it on all of them. Can I? Of course I can't. So let's do apply, set transition. I don't know. 5 frames is probably good. Then I'll click that. I'll do copy. I'll click here and do paste. Click here and do paste. Cool. Let's listen to that again.
More than twice.
plus at that point, it's
What to do more than twice.
plus at that point, it's
Way
like
better.
they know,
Yeah.
they're just not doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So, and I'll say that. I'll be
that.
like, hi.
To put audio transitions on every single cut would be like brutal. So I'm only really doing it on the most egregious.
We've been working together all day. Something you should know about me is that I don't tell an adult what to do more than twice. And
Do
they
you
usually get the
preface-
picture.
Do you say it before the second warning or after?
I'll say it after the second.
Yeah.
That's great.
The other thing that
So here we are.
the second.
Yeah.
That's great.
The other thing that an AD needs to do is based on the job, like so you know how
So now I'm going to watch it for a little bit. This could be potentially a piece of dialogue that could be cut, or it could be good. So I'm just going to watch for a little bit, decide what to do, and go back.
any
So because we just kind of finished with a point. This is great. It kind of feels like an ending to that subject. What cameras did I film with? I believe the wide shot was a C100 Mark II. I think that was our camera. We now own a C200, which is cool. It's a great camera. And the two cameras on the side were both C300s, either Mark I or Mark II. I think it's a Mark I. This is 2 years old. Those two C300s were the YouTube spaces, which is cool.
I'll say it after the second.
Yeah.
That's great.
The other thing that an AD needs to do is based on the job, like so you know how on any shoot there will be one determining factor that if not managed will fuck you.
Give us
Will
an
just
example.
fuck
Can you
you
give me an
over.
example?
Just like a certain part of the location, you know, like maybe there's like one tiny little rickety elevator and 6 hampers of gear.
Okay, I like that. This is really good stuff. She's great. I think I want to just try to fix this little gap right here. This little like thing. Zoom in a bit.
The other thing that an AD needs to do is based on the job, like
So I'm gonna get in here close and just make that cut here.
so you know how on any shoot there will be
Sorry that it's skipping. I don't know if I can do anything about it.
an AD needs to do is based on the job, like so you know how on any shoot
I'm gonna try to get into that so.
so you
Looks like it's so important to see the waveforms because I can tell that like that's where the so is right there. So this definitely looks like it's going to need to be an audio transition. So I still have the 5-frame audio crossfade in my clipboard, but I want to do 3 frames for this one just from experience. I'm going to copy that. Paste, back out a bit. Let me see how this works. It's going to skip, so I'm going to go a little bit further
The
back.
other, and
Do
they
you
usually get the
preface-
picture.
Do you say it before the second warning or after?
I'll say it after the second.
Yeah.
That's great.
The other thing that an AD needs to do is based on the job, like, so you know how on any shoot there will be one determining factor that if not managed will fuck you.
So yeah, that sounds good, but now I got to think about what camera to use there.
Before the second warning or after?
I'll say it after the second.
Yeah.
That's great.
The other thing that an AD needs to do is based on the job, like, so you know how on any shoot
So she looks at me. So, oh man, I forget which one's me. I think I'm the bottom one. Yeah, so I'll go to me.
is based on the job, like, so you know how on any shoot there will be one determining factor that
I mentioned this.
determining fa-
I mentioned this in my test stream, but like she does turn back and forth between us, and obviously that's a symptom of the way we shot it. I like the way we shot it. I like this format, but I think someone who's editing it, who's not me, might think, okay, so she turns her
factor
head.
that-
Ooh, what just happened there? That's not good. Hang on, let me go back. I see what I did. I moved the clips instead of cutting the clip. But anyway, so she turns her head to Cody. I feel like she turns her head, and then that's when you cut to Cody. But no, I like to cut to Cody before she's actually moved her head yet. And then on the cut, she turns into frame. It's just an aesthetic choice I like. Let me fix what I just did here.
But like, so you know how on any shoot there will be one determining
Okay, so she looks at me
any
there.
shoot there.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So what I did was I screwed up.
Job,
So I wanted
like-
to cut to my angle
So
here.
you know how on any shoot there will be one determining factor
Right
at-
to there. So right before she turns away. So I'm going to do this, and I want to roll these back. I don't want to move them.
But like, so you know how on any shoot there will be one determining factor that if not
Oh,
managed
but I want it to go to
will
Cody's.
fuck you.
Give us an
It can go back to probably could go back to my shot there. So actually, you know what I'll do? Cut there. Bring these both over. This is why this takes a long
like,
time,
so
because
you know
I
how
don't want jump cuts.
Any shoot there will be one determining factor that if not managed will fuck you.
Give us
We'll
an
just
example.
fuck
Can
you
you give me an
over.
example?
Just
I guess I didn't need to pull over the middle one here, because that's just Cody's angle. I just wanted it to cut back to the wide shot here.
just like a certain part of the location, you know, like maybe there's like one tiny little rickety elevator and 6 hampers of gear.
Okay, so
Can you give me an
Over.
example?
Just like a certain part of the location, you know, like like
probably right here we could cut back to me.
location, you know, like maybe there's like one tiny little rickety elevator and 6 hampers of gear.
Wish I could do something about that pause. May I ask why that tiny bit of audio was cut? It just flows better. Oh man, I should check the chat more often. So the part where she says like, yeah, I'm like, this is all about flow. This particular edit is all about flow. The conversation should never dawdle, should never stop. If there's an I'm trying to cut it out. If there's a long pause, I'm trying to cut it out. I want to keep you interested, and I feel that like a pause or an is going to take away from that. And the thing is an hour long, so if I leave in more and more of those, the video is going to be longer and longer. So even if I can get rid of 10 frames of a pause, so 10 frames would be a little less than half a second. Over time, 10 frames, if I get rid of 30 of those, 30 times 10, 300 frames. I'm not going to do the math. But that's like lots of seconds. And over time, you can cut out a minute or more, maybe. Over the longer you go, the more you're going to cut out. So because it's such a long edit, it's a long thing, even these small, tiny little cuts will add up over the course of the edit, make it shorter, and also keep the flow going. Or when the waveform drops below a certain level. Well, when the waveform, when it's a quiet part, there's nothing there, like right here. So that's a good indication that I should cut that, because it's just a pause. So there is a long pause here about when she says, or maybe it's, so there's definitely going to be a way to shorten this up. So let's figure out how I'm going to do it.
Maybe there's like one tiny little rickety elevator. And
I think I might have to cut out my laugh.
and 6 hamper
Or no, maybe not.
the elevator. And
So yeah, I'm just going to cut right here. I'm going to make sure I don't cut off her s. I'm going to get rid of all that. Close the gap. And then I think I can just disable those.
there's like one tiny little rickety elevator. And
Why did it do that?
and 6 hampers of gear. Little rickety elevator. And
I am going to also, Cody's going, so I think I'm going to mute him.
the elevator.
This is me. This I think is Cody.
And
Yeah, so
the elevator.
So I'm just going to literally just pull back, oops, Apple Z. I'm going to pull back Cody here.
Little rickety elevator.
Maybe I'll also pull me back. That way you can hear her.
Little rickety elevator. And tiny little rickety elevator. And
What to do?
6 hampers of gear. Tiny little rickety elevator.
See, in a situation like this, it would have been really awesome to have like only me in a shot. And I could zoom into it. I could zoom into this. But if I had only me, I could just go, haha, and I could edit Rita's dialogue to be much more snappy. It could say, Ricky elevator, and 6, like I can just make her say that. But I kind of screwed myself by having Rita in every shot. I can jump ahead, but this is like a sticky situation where it's kind of hard to like really make it good, make the flow better. So at a certain point, I got to ask myself, is it worth the work to really try to make this better? Now, like I said, if I had a close-up of me or a close-up of Cody without Rita in it, I could really go in there and craft her dialogue. But in this case, it's like there's really not much I can do to like fix the flow.
Tiny little rickety elevator. And 6 hampers of gear.
Obviously, I would like to cut.
Elevator. And the elevator. And the elevator. And 6 hampers of gear.
See, I can't cut away here because I would leave that gap. So watch, hang on, let me go back. So there's that gap. So if I cut away here
Elevator.
to Cody or something,
6 hampers of
that's actually better. You know what? I am going to cut away. I'm going to, at this, like I was saying, I can't really make it perfect. So I think the best bet is to just leave the pause. I lost this battle. Just deal with it. I lost the battle. So I'll just leave the whole pause and I'll just try to make the pause as pretty as possible. And I think that is cutting to Cody.
and 6 hampers of gear.
That skip that you saw is not happening. That's not really happening. That skip is happening because I'm streaming. So forget that for now. But what I'll also do is I could also soften this up by lowering Cody and Mai's reaction. And I think the easiest way I can do that right now is to just do pen tool, boom, 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 boom. And then me up here, sort of similar, boom, 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 boom. And then dragging it down to basically nothing. So this is like cross dissolve out to nothing, cross dissolve back up. But I'm doing it with the pen tool. A little bit faster, and I don't have to do any blading or anything. So I think this is the best solution for this problem.
One tiny little rickety elevator. And 6 hampers of gear. and 20 people for the load in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
like it's part of my job to be like,
All right, let's keep on going. What else we got? Oh, nothing new. Okay. Please, yeah, keep on asking. Like, I'm just going to be editing, and I'll totally stop when a question comes in, or just continue watching me edit. We can also move on to photography analyzation at some point.
6 hampers of gear and 20 people for the load in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
like it's part of my job to be like, okay,
I think I can get rid of this little extra bit here. I'm kind of, I need to go back a bit and just
I think you
I'm
should
a little lost in the woods. I need to like rehear
get
this.
the picture.
Do you say it before the second warning or after?
I'll say it after the second.
Yeah.
That's great.
The other thing that an AD needs to do is based on the job, how on any shoot there will be one determining factor that if not managed will fuck you.
Give us
We'll
an
just
example.
fuck
Can you
you
give me an
over.
example?
Just like a certain part of the location, like maybe there's like one tiny little rickety elevator and 6 hampers of gear and 20 people for the load in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
that's
So
good.
like it's part of my job to be like, okay, if we don't give it enough time, the load in will fuck us.
She has a little. So here's a battle I can win. She has a little stutter. I'm gonna fix that.
So like it's part of my job to be like, okay, if we don't
That little stutter there.
job to be like, okay,
Cut.
if we don't
Once again, I apologize for the stuttering of the whole thing. I'm not exactly sure how I can fix that, but as time goes on, we'll make the streams better. This is really instructive, incredibly fine-tuned editing. Yes. Yes, I hope so. I was saying in one of the posts that I made for this stream is that this type of streaming that I'm doing right now where I'm editing is as if you're my apprentice. So it is probably not for everybody, but if you really want to like really get into the weeds and really see what's going on in my mind for like everything I'm doing, that's what this is for. And I like doing it too because a lot of people don't realize like what goes into editing something like this. Like this particular type of video, when you watch it, you shouldn't be thinking that there's any editing at all. If you watch it from the beginning, it's just going from camera to camera. The conversation's flowing. They're funny. They're laughing about things like this. And you don't realize that there's a little stutter missing there. There's an that's taken out there. There was a pause while they thought here. All of those little things like make it much more flowy. And a lot of people don't. You're not supposed to see an edit. If you see the editing, it's not good editing, at least for a project like this. Ryan Greer, as of now, just me. What is your advice to anyone who's working on a project from development to post-production? As of now, is just you who are working on the project from development to post-production. I would say stay organized. I would say, stay as organized as you can. You want to break the project up into different things, like, do you have a script? Do you have a storyboard? And just like try to move the project through phases. You have pre-production, production, post-production. So pre-production is probably going to be a long time. Pre-production can last years. Production will be the shortest amount of time because it's a lot of money to like rent the cameras or like get people together, schedule locations and stuff like that. So that's going to be the shortest amount of time. But part of pre-production is scheduling production, and then post-production can be long as well. But you want to get the thing done. So stay organized. Try to make incremental plans to move the project forward. I would also say get outside help in terms of the idea. Do not start production on this idea without showing your script, if you're writing a script, or at least the idea, to people you trust, people who can give you real brutal criticism, your mom, your dad, your best friend, someone who's not afraid to tell it like it is. So if you give them the idea, if they say, this is great, give it to somebody else to talk to. You need to talk to people that you trust to find the flaws, to find the things that are bad. So give it to people that care about you, who are willing to put in the energy to tell you what needs to be done. If you gave someone an idea or a script or something and they thought it was perfect right out of the gate, I'd be really surprised. That doesn't really happen often. So I would say stay organized, make incremental plans to move the project forward, and especially for the idea before you do any production, any idea, scripting, whatever it is, you need criticism. No one should ever go and shoot their first draft. Don't do that. That's all I'll say. Chetta, can you explain the concept of audio dissolved transitions? So if I have a voiceover to a video and it cuts to a quote from an interview I had, you'd want to do a transition, right? I am not an audio person, lol. Lisa says Trello is an application I use to organize a project. That's cool. I've heard of Trello. That's cool. Ryan, try Trello. There's also one called like disco.ac. That's like an organization tool. That's free, I think. Chetta. Yeah, so an audio transition is where you have a piece of audio and you have another piece of audio, and what's happening is, for a moment in time, at least for a dissolve, for a moment in time, those pieces of audio are playing at the same time. Except for that moment that they overlap, here's one clip, here's the other clip. I mean, here's one clip. It's a long clip. And here's another clip. Here's another clip. It's another long clip. For a certain moment of time, those clips are overlapped, and you're hearing them at the same time. But a transition is when, usually at the point at which this clip starts, let's say it's my hands, right? So this is the amount of time that they are overlapped and they're playing at the same time. So usually right here, the frame at which that starts, it's at that point that the volume is going down. So the volume will go down linearly until it reaches the point at which this one starts. And vice versa. This one starts from nothing. So this one's playing, it's full volume, and it goes down. This one started from silence and it comes up. So one is transitioning from silence to full volume, and the other one is transitioning from full volume to silence, and that they're animated at the same time. They're happening at the same time. That's basically what's happening during a transition, during an audio dissolve. You don't always need one. So for instance, if there is just a moment of silence, like let's say I talk and I'm like, anyway, let's go to our interview. And it's silence. And then the interview starts and it's silent and it goes, hey, what's up? There's really no need to do any kind of transition because those clips kind of just end. The thing that happens is usually with dialogue, there is a room tone involved. So you might hear me talk, but then once I'm silent, there's always this sort of floor of noise, like a hiss, a sss, or a reverberation off the walls, or just in the room you were shooting, there was an air conditioner in the background, or a refrigerator was running, or just some sort of presence, room tone they call it. So most of the time when you're going from one place to another, there is an audible difference between the room tone. So in a situation like that, you would want to have like a nice amount of silence. You want to, hello, let's go to them, and just leave that there. And then as the next one plays, you want to have the dissolve go from the room tone to nothing, and then the other one from nothing to room tone, so that you don't hear like just a click or a pop from one to the other. When you have two different room tones put together and it's just an edit, it sounds like a click because it's like a sharp change from one sort of frequency to another. So it just goes pop to the other one. So, but one way to not need those cross dissolves at all is if you have just music underneath. So if you just have a music track laying underneath, and the difference between the room noise and the dialogue is a lot, then once you put the music underneath, you don't even hear the room tone anymore. So it really depends. If you have a musical track that's going underneath the whole time and you have something, different audio clips, then you don't necessarily need cross dissolves. But I would urge you to edit with headphones on. You can hear a lot with the headphones on that you wouldn't necessarily hear if you're just editing on a laptop. Once you're done and you know that, like, let's say you're editing a video for YouTube, I would watch it on your phone without headphones on, just to make sure it sounds okay, it's loud enough. But when editing, you want to have your headphones on just so you can really hear everything that's going on. Stand by. I'm not an audio expert either. I just learned about compression the other day. Well, not the other day. I knew of compression, but I learned how to do it and what it's doing, like, not so long ago. Is there a standard frames per second? Because you just talked about audio, I kind of have to talk about that and frames per second. So yes, in video, you're seeing the way video works is that you're seeing many images flash before your eyes, and your brain can't distinguish between them fast enough, so it looks like motion, you know. The slowest frames per second that will start to trick your brain into actually seeing motion, like if you're flipping through a flip book, is probably like 10 frames a second, maybe less. 10 to 12 frames a second. You have a flip book and you're going like 10 frames. Things start to look like motion. So obviously the faster the better, but the more and more frames a second you have in a video, it starts to look a little not like real life. Like it starts to look weird because there's so many, motion is so clear. So then it comes down to aesthetic. What looks the most like real life, but not so much like real life, but not so smooth that it like actually looks pleasing. So for the most part, cinema has always been 24 frames per second. And that has just enough of this blur, like enough of the staccato and enough of the frames happening that it looks like motion, but it's also not really like real life a lot. So it helps a story be told. It helps you're suspending your disbelief because it's moving good, but it doesn't look like real life. Sorry, it doesn't look like real life. So it kind of allows the brain to sort of enter this fantasy world. The more frames a second, like 30 frames a second, you might see more TV, like a newscast. A little bit smoother looking. I'm sure you noticed the difference between a movie and a newscast in terms of just the motion. They look like they're moving smoother in a newscast because it's 30 frames a second. But it's also a little bit more like real life. So we've kind of just expected 30 frames a second or more to like be more of a real life. A soap opera is 30 frames a second. And as we go on, The Hobbit was released in 48 frames a second for different reasons. People liked it, people didn't like it. A lot of video games are in 60 frames a second. Gamers like more frames a second because it is more clear, it's more immersive, because they want it to look like real life or more. Whereas like a film is more passive, you kind of want it to be like an escape. So the standards out there, 24 frames a second for film, 30 frames a second for video, 60 frames a second for like video games. Yeah, those are like the standards that are out now. Now, yeah, you might see when you start looking at things, like you might go into your program and be like, all right, I need to like choose which frames a second I want to shoot at. Steve told me 24 frames, so where's the 24? I don't see 24, I see 23.98. I don't see 30, I see 29.97. The reason why those are not right on the integer of 24 or 30 is too much to get into. It has to do with like really in the weeds of how refresh rates work, how frames work, how digital information works. But suffice to say, like when it was cinema, when it was actual frames of film going through the shutter and you were shooting on film, it was 24 frames per second. But when digital video came around, the designers of them had to do different things to get it all to fit like into the broadcast, to be able to broadcast it over the air. And in America, it just ended up being 29.97. In Britain, it ended up, there are different engineers over there, so Britain has 25 frames a second. But it's a lot to get into, but that's the basics of it. There's also one little addendum I want to say about frames per second, that is slow-mo. So you might hear someone say like, oh, we're shooting this at 1,000 frames a second. We're shooting this one at 10,000 frames a second. And you might think to yourself like, well, wait a minute. 24 frames a second is like film, and it's like a certain amount of motion blur. 30 frames a second is a little bit less motion blur, a little bit smoother. 60 frames a second is even less motion blur. But wouldn't 1,000 frames a second be like super crazy to see? Like, how is that slow-mo? How is shooting it in higher frames slow-mo? Well, it's because they don't tell you that they're shooting at 1,000 frames per second. But then they take those 1,000 frames that they shot in the second and they play them back at 24 frames per second. So if you have 1,000 frames per second and then you play it back at 24 frames per second, that's going to take like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Let's say you shot like 10 seconds of footage at 2,400 frames a second. 10 seconds of footage at 2,400 frames a second. I don't know if this math is correct, but if you play it back at 24 frames a second, that's going to be 10 seconds. That's going to be like 10,000 seconds. So it's a lot. So that's the thing that's the thing they don't tell you, is that like when they shoot something at a high frame rate at 120 frames a second, 240 frames per second, they're going to play it back at a standard frame rate, like 30 frames a second or like 60 frames a second. So when you hear high speed, that's because it's capturing lots of frames per second, but then plays it back at a normal frame rate, and it's slow-mo. But there's a lot of information there. Anyway, now audio. Because you were just talking about audio, and then you said, is there a standard frames per second? So audio does not work like frames per second. Visually, there are frames, and it only takes like 10 of them to convince us that we're seeing motion. Audio is different. What is the smallest increment of a sound? Now, I am not an audio person. I don't really know. But you may have seen quality of audio 44.1 kilohertz or 48 kilohertz. I want to see if I'm doing it correctly. So I have my Zoom here, because I don't know this offhand, so I need to kind of look it up. But if you're talking about film, that's the standard frame rate. But you do get asked a lot. I have been asked, like, hey, so my audio is drifting. Like, you know, I recorded my audio separately and I put it in my timeline, but my audio is like going out of sync the longer it's in the thing. Like, what frame rate is the audio at? Like, is the audio frame rate the same as my camera's frame rate? And so that's where it starts to get a little confusing. Yeah, kilohertz. Okay, so, and then there's also bit depth. I don't even know that, but I'm talking about just what's called samples rate, a sample rate. So like a frame rate in film is like a sample rate in audio, kind of. And so what does that mean? So a higher sample rate is going to give you more data. It's going to be a higher quality sound because there's more data there to work with. So for instance, 48 kilohertz. 48 kilohertz means 48,000. Kilo is 1,000. Hertz. Hertz means frequencies, how many times per second. So in 1 second of audio, if you're at 48 kilohertz sample rate, that means that 48,000 times in that 1 second, it is capturing sound data. That's a high-ass frame rate. That's 48,000 times. So then if you dip down to 44.1, so 44,100 kilohertz sample rate, that's CD quality. So I would like to ask my audio engineer friends out there, how far down the sample rate, how far down does the sample rate have to go before you're starting to hear, like, you know, before you're starting to hear, like, weird sounds? Is it 30 kilohertz? Is it 20 kilohertz? Is it 10 kilohertz? What does our ear hear, you know? Because think about it, if you're only capturing it at 10,000 times a second, then that means that there are gaps in your data, you know, compared to 48 kilohertz. So it's, and I have no idea what 16-bit or 24-bit depth is. I kind of know, even in film, I don't even fully know. Just means more data to work with. Anyway, I hope this makes sense. God bless the Zoom H friend. Good luck with your future streams. Have to go. Thank you, Oliver. consider subscribing so you're notified when I go live. Sorry I talked for a million years, but I hope it's like helpful. Lisa Rose, I am learning DaVinci Resolve. That's cool. I don't do DaVinci Resolve, but my business partner up on the screen here, this guy, Cody, does DaVinci. He's very good at it. I am trying to figure out why my camera says it shoots 60 frames per second, and then when I import the frame rate, suddenly it is 29.97. I don't think it's an issue with DaVinci. That's a good question. I mean, it could be many, many things. It could be a bunch of different things. I don't know how DaVinci works. I know how Premiere works. So I would say if you can try to make sure that your timeline in DaVinci matches the settings of your media, maybe that'll help. Maybe DaVinci doesn't do 60 frames a second. That seems strange to me, though. Camera is Sony HDR CX 765. I'm actually going to look that up. We'll just do it now. Sony HDR CX 675. Why am I caps lock on? I feel like it's Christmas Day with the depth of information that's being presented here. Well, I hope it's valuable to people. If it is valuable and you want to show some support, you could always super chat, be a member, whatever you want to do. At the very least, a subscription would be cool. A subscribe on YouTube or a follow on Twitch. So let's look at this. Sony HDR CX65 Full HD Handycam kit with 2 batteries. What does it shoot in? 1080p video up to 60 frames per second. That's cool. Let's see, what else does it do? Let's do specs. See, there's the sensor. 0.5, a little over a half-inch sensor. I don't have my do I? Where's my, I don't have my tape measure around. Anyway. Recording, okay. So here's all the formats. 24, 30, 60 frames per second. 1080p. 1080i, 60 frames. I would make doubly sure, Lisa, that make sure you are on P, progressive. Get ready to take more notes. Ready? I'm going to tell you the difference between progressive and interlaced. All right? Your camera is probably on interlaced, is my guess. Because here's how it works. Progressive, P, means that every frame that's hitting your face is coming at you every line of the resolution. So there's 1080 lines of resolution going like this, going like a ladder. There's 1920 this way, but there's 1080 this way. When you do progressive, the sensor is scanning the whole sensor, all 1080 frames. It is scanning it at 60 frames per second progressive, the whole thing. That's progressive. Interlaced is different. Interlaced means it's scanning each other line. So it's doing line 1, it scans into the data. It does line 3, then line 5, then line 7, then line 9, all the way down. It's getting this frame, this field. They call them fields. That's in 1/60th of a second. It's doing this. That's 60i. So it's only half the frame. Then the other 60th of a second, it does the evens, the 2, 4, 5. And so 1/60th of the second is the evens. The other 60th of a second is the odds. And together, in 1/30th of a second, you have both put together. So it goes like this. So if you look at it 1/60th of a second, if you stop it, you're only going to see half the frame. If that's what you're looking at, if you stop it if you're looking at it every 30th of a second, it's both. So my guess is that your camera is on 1080i 60 because 1080i 60 is 60 fields a second, but it is only 29.97 frames a second. So I would urge you to go back to your camera. I would put it on this setting here, 50 megabits, XAVCS, put it on that setting. Put it at 60 frames if you want 60 frames. But if you are at 1920 by 1080p at this setting here, XAVCS, and you're at 60 frames, progressive, it should be 60 frames, or technically 59.96 frames a second. If your camera is on, I'd go get it right now, because I'm curious to know. If just whatever setting you're shooting on, if it says I, if you're in the settings and it's I, or if it's any of these other settings that's not 24, then I'm going to pat myself on the back, because that makes sense. If that's not the case, if you're on P, if your camera is on P, progressive, then I don't know if I can help you. It's something to do with importing the footage, and there's some kind of setting in DaVinci. But I would venture a guess that you think it's on 60 frames a second when you shot it, but it's really on 29.9. It's really on I, and therefore 29.97 frames per second. That's my guess. If it helps, please tell people about this stream. Am I in front of it? Yeah. It's on 1080i. Boom. Knew it. Yes. So once again, I have the camera right in front of me. Sweet. So put it on. Make sure you go to 50 megabits a second, XAVCS. You want it on that setting. I don't know how to get there. You're just going to have to go into the menus and figure it out. And then, yeah, progressive X. I bet that you can just change whatever the codec is. So the codec is just put it on XAVCS. That's the only setting that has this here. If you have it on just AVC HD, it's going to give you all of these settings, but I would put on this one because this is the highest quality. 50 megabits a second, XAVC-S, 60 frames a second with a 32 gigabyte card. I don't know. My gut tells me that's like 40 minutes. Could be more. Could be like an hour and a half. I'm not sure. Boom. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. So yeah, keep the camera on that setting. If you have it on 60 frames per second, then when you import it into DaVinci, it will be 60 frames per second. A couple of people in Twitch. Got 4 people watching in Twitch. I'm curious. Say hello. Say hello in the chat. I just solved Lisa's problem. Do you have a problem? That's what I'm here for. That's what this stream is for. I actually think that's a great place to end it for tonight. I usually I'm only going to try and stream for 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours. I think is what I'm going to try to do. Lisa, put it on XAVC, whatever that was. Did I exit off? I hope I didn't. Put it on XAVCS. Put it on that setting. Take it off AVC HD. It's probably in the codec section. Yeah, because look, AVC HD is the highest you can get is 28 megabits a second, but XAVCS is 50, almost double the quality. So in DaVinci, if you're looking to do color correction or any kind of enhancing of it, in DaVinci, you're going to have a lot more to work with 50 megabits a second than you would with 28. Just a higher quality setting. This is the setting that your camera should be on, absolutely. You're welcome, Lisa. Aren't you glad you tuned in? Can't believe you knew it was in 1080i. Thanks, Pat. Prince, thank you. Let's play Friday the 13th in a little bit. Oh, Lisa, thank you. I appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much. You know, I did not expect a super chat my first stream, but thank you so much. Well, you know what? If you are going to stick around, I'll go for a little bit longer. I'll go for another half hour. I do have to pee, though, again. So think about it. Think about anything you might want to ask me, and I'll edit for another, like, half hour after I pee. But for right now, I'm going to, what was that? Lisa Rose. Oh yeah, it was a little delayed, but thank you for the super chat. Thank you again. Thank you so much. If I had more, I'd give more. No worries. No worries. No worries. I'm happy. You're happy. I'm happy. I love saving the day, so that's great. I'm gonna pee. I'll be right back.
Darmok, Angela, and Tanagra. Darmok, Angela, and Tanagra. Darmok, Angela, and Tanagra. Darmok, Angela, and Tanagra. I am Locutus aboard. You will respond to my questions. I am Locutus aboard. You are bored. I am Locutus aboard. You will assist us. I am Locutus aboard. You are bored. I am Locutus aboard. Lock phases on that vessel. I am Locutus aboard. There are 4 lights. Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise. Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise. Make it so. Make it so. Make it so. Make it so. Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise. Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise. Make it so. Make it so. Make it so. Make it so.
Hey, I'm back. All right, let's get rid of this. Whoops. I lost my chat. Okay, there we go. 30 more minutes. 30 more minutes. Lisa, I don't know if you're a subscriber on YouTube, but if you're not, you just click the little subscribe button below, and all it does is just let you know. Well, I think you also might have to click the bell that's next to that too. But basically, if I'm live, you'll sign into YouTube and you'll see I'm live. So, or you'll get notified depending on like how your settings are. But Chetta, also I'm subscribed. Thank you so much. Yay! Oh, what have you got to say, Chetta? Sorry, I was peeing. Lisa says this information is gold. That's what I'm here for. I did try 1080p for the record, lol. I don't understand. If you tried it, then what? I don't understand what you mean by you tried 1080p. Like in the camera? So you put it on 1080p, but then you went back to 1080i. Did you like the way I looked better? Which is fine. Anyway, I'm just confused. Chetta, all right, I'll throw out another question. I was shooting video of people on a canal in bright light the other day. Hang on. A lot of my shots were out of focus. I was using autofocus a bit. Maybe that's why. I have been told by some people that shutter speed has something to do with it. I'm having a lot of trouble understanding why. Also, I'm subscribed. Thank you so much. Okay. It's a hard question to diagnose. It could be your shutter speed. Chetta, I would definitely go on my channel after this stream. Let me type this in. Go on my channel after the stream, and in the chat, DSLR basic settings tutorial. Watch that. It's an hour long. It's 52 minutes. But if you watch that, you'll get an understanding. Oh shit. Hey, sorry. Thanks, Pat. Thank you. Thank you. Forgot to transition. See, that's the downside of doing the editing thing. I have noticed that when I consistently use manual focus, my shots are great. When I try to play around with autofocus, my shots aren't always good. That could be why too. Okay, so I'll start to break this down. So you say you are in bright light. If you're in bright light, then depending on what settings your camera is in, first of all, go watch the DSLR basic settings tutorial after I'm done, and you'll get a greater understanding of how your camera works. What kind of camera are you using, by the way? But if you're on any kind of auto setting on the camera, I'm assuming the camera's on some kind of auto setting. I don't know what you've got going on. But if there's a lot of light, you said you were in bright light. If there's a lot of light, you're on a newsroom camcorder. So you're not even on this isn't a film camera. This isn't a photography. This is videography. I'm shooting a story for air. Oh, cool. Newsroom camcorder. All right, I'll throw another question. I was shooting video of people on a canal in bright light the other day. All right, that kind of makes me change my mind. The basic setting tutorial might not work, but it would still be helpful to watch. News reporter, that's cool. Chetta, I don't mean to sound mean from what I'm about to say, but like back in my day, you didn't shoot any news unless you knew how to work a camera. So it's a little disconcerting to me that there are people out there who are able to like get a job shooting with a camera and that they don't really know what's going on. Like that's weird to me, but it's the world we live in now. Back in the day, like when I worked for the wedding photography place, so we're not even talking news, we're talking about wedding photography place that had video. They had $20,000 broadcast cameras, and I wasn't even allowed to touch that thing for months. And when I did, I only was able to like shoot flowers and like random stuff. Like it was nothing that was going to be reliant on the video having to be edited. So it was very much like a guarded thing. So it's just concerning to me. Not concerning, it's surprising to me that there are situations out there where like you don't really have the same amount of knowledge and you're out there shooting things for air. So I don't know. Good for you though. That's awesome that you have a gig doing it. Fresh out of college and I'm training. Oh, that's cool. That's good. Sorry if that sounded mean, but it's just like, wow, man, if only I was fresh out of college now. I have noticed that when I consistently use manual focus, my shots are great. When I try to play around with autofocus, well, if you're doing video of any kind, no autofocus. There shouldn't even be an option except for very, very rare circumstances. But if you are shooting news for air on a video camera, you should not be doing autofocus at all. What you should be doing is the best thing you could do to practice focus is set up your camera on a tripod on a sidewalk where there are a lot of people, and shoot down the length of the sidewalk. And what you should do is you should zoom in on some person going medium shot, waist up, and zoom out as they're walking towards you. Try to keep them in the frame, waist up, as you zoom out. And as they're coming towards you, you're going to have to get a sense of the focus. So you eventually, as you practice this zooming out and focusing technique, you're going to get a sense of how fast the person's moving and how fast you need to focus. How slow they're moving, you'll do slower. This is also basically the same shot that I used to get of the bride walking down the aisle. You would zoom in to get waist up or full body, usually with the dress. Yes, usually you'd start full body and then go into waist up. But you'd be all the way at the other end of the church. But we had the big broadcast cameras, so we'd zoom in to full body, get the focus, and then as she's walking down, you didn't even shoot that bride shot until you had like a year of experience doing the other angle of the side angle, because as she's walking towards you, she's going out of focus. So you need to do it on the fly. And that was whole part of the gig was focus pulling. So I would recommend just one day, tell your bosses or whatever, you want to like go out and just shoot, do that. I want to go out on the sidewalk, shoot down the sidewalk and practice pulling focus as people are walking. Your boss would be like, sure, go practice. But I would say do that for a while, because then you get a sense of like which way is when something's coming at you. On the O's cameras, it was up and in, down and away. So if you were focused, if something was coming at you, you'd be going up and in with your left hand going up. And then if someone was going away, it was down and away. So up and in, down and away. Anyway. I'm going to try to answer that question. So, you said you were on a canal, bright light. I'm going to read all the information before I put together my hypothesis. It's great. When I try to play around with autofocus, my shots aren't always too good. That could be why too. Yeah, never do autofocus for that kind of stuff. Flomsy and Twitch, is editing hard? Yes. And eventually I will get back into editing and you'll see how hard. I'm learning. I'm fresh out of college training right now. Most of the time I would have my own photographer, but they want to prepare me to be able to be a one-man band, of course, if that makes sense. I'm also fresh out of college. I'm not offended, and though you aren't mean. Oh, the story was for web. It actually didn't air. I shot a story a few days ago that did air for the first time, though, and it's a lot better. Lisa, I'm the same way. I can't retain information unless I know everything about it. I'm the same way. That's why I do this. Okay, so to go back to your thing, you were on a canal, bright light, a lot of the shots were out of focus. You were using autofocus a bit. Okay, so you've been told that shutter speed has something to do with it. Also, with a video camera, you shouldn't be touching shutter speed unless the only time you should be touching shutter speed as a news reporter is if the shot is so bright, and even if you have ND, neutral density filters on, and you're irised all the way down, and it's still too bright, then and only then you touch the shutter speed. But what camera are you shooting on, by the way? Oh, you said you didn't know what it was. It's probably some kind of Sony camcorder, maybe a Canon type camcorder. Could be an FS7, FS5, Sony FS5. Could be one of those. I'm obviously a newbie, and I consider this channel and your tutorial as the next step to, so to speak. That's awesome. Just stand in the shade. Yeah, Pat, I know. Anyway, you shouldn't really be touching your shutter speed. Now, on a video camera, depending on what kind of video camera, and for news, I'm assuming you're shooting at 29.97, so you're shooting at 30 frames per second for news, most likely. So that means your shutter speed should be 1/60th of a second, or 60. If you're doing by shutter speed by seconds, it's 1/60th of a second. If your camera is set on shutter angle, which is sort of a relic from the days in film, then the shutter angle would be 180 degrees. I could get on that whole topic, but that's like an hour. I've also noticed that when I zoom all the way in and focus every time I move to a different shot, that helps. Yes, that is a classic trick for shooting videography. You zoom to the end of the lens on somebody's face, focus up and pull back, and you should be in focus. You shouldn't have to touch the focus wheel after that. That is like standard. That doesn't always work with DSLR, and it also doesn't always work with a video camera if the back focus is off. So the back focus is where the lens attaches to the camera. That has to be calibrated, and usually the back focus doesn't go off unless it's like really been beaten up and it's been used a lot. Like the wedding cameras, the back focus used to go off like maybe once a year. So you'd have to like calibrate that. So if that happens to you, which is probably not the back focus, I would just make sure that like if that happens to you, I'd type in the camera, type in back focus adjustment tutorial and find that. Also, the big wedding cameras we used to have, the lenses had a macro mode. And sometimes because of transportation or whatever, the cameras would be engaged in the macro mode, and you would pick up that camera and try to focus and be like, well, something's wrong. Is the back focus off? What's going on? And you didn't realize that the back of the lens was switched to macro. So make sure your camera's lens doesn't have a macro mode, and if it is, it's off macro. Don't put it on macro. The only time you want to have the macro lens with those is if you're really trying to get a close-up shot, small detail shot of something. Yes, but yeah, if you have a lot of time and you can do it, then you want to, if you're interviewing someone, you want to zoom in all the way to their face, focus, and pull back. Most of the time, 90% of the time, that means your shot's going to be in focus unless your macro mode is on for some reason or your back focus of the camera is off. If those two situations are happening, then it's not going to be the case, which means you shouldn't always trust the zoom focus pull out. You shouldn't always trust that. What you should trust is peaking. I would put your peaking on definitely. When I shoot with cameras, I put the peaking on. I make it red. I do red peaking. And then I play with every camera is different. I play with the frequency and stuff like that so that like I can really see the peaking. Peaking, if you don't know, it's when the camera sort of, any parts that are in focus, the edges, they turn those pixels red or white or blue or green. You select your color. So when you turn the focus on, when the peaking is on, it's a great way to see where you're in focus and where you're not in focus. So I would definitely make your peaking on, make it visible, do that zoom focus out, but then also keep your peaking on. I'd also put your zebras on too. That's a whole other thing. But anyway, why are your shots out of focus? You said you were in bright light. So if you're in bright light, you're gonna iris down. Unless you put on the neutral density filter. If you put on the neutral density filter, you put on the ND, then I could see you putting up the ND and then having now that you have neutral density filters are like sunglasses. You're literally taking sunglasses, like a tinted lens or tinted filter, and putting it over the lens or putting it in front of the sensor. So it's like putting on more and more sunglasses. So if you put like an ND, you put more and more ND filters on, the shot's going to get darker, which means now you need to open up the iris. You were playing around with the ND filter. So if you're in a bright light situation and you're still out of focus, then the only time I can see that happening is if you have a lot of ND on and now you're too dark. So now you're going to open up the aperture. When you open up the aperture, you're going to get very shallow depth of field, which can be good. But if you have a shallow depth of field, you really need to be crucial about your focus. You need to have your peaking on. You need to make sure you're in focus. So I would say if you're having trouble especially in bright light, it's hard to see your monitor. If you're out in bright light, you should be using the viewfinder, the one that you should be using. Hey, look at this. I just happen to have my camera right here. If you're out in bright light, you should be using this. You should be going like this if you're out in bright light, because that cuts out all the light. If you're out in bright light, you should not be using this thing. If you're out in bright light, you need to be doing this. It's easier to tell whether you're in focus, and it's easier to see the monitor. So you might have been playing around with the NDs. You probably got a little too dark, so then you irised up, and now you have, or irised down, and now you have wide aperture. But it's also bright out, so it's hard to see the viewfinder. And so it's like, and you might not have had peaking on, so maybe that's why your shots were out of focus. Shutter speed, you said that someone said to you that it's possible that your shots could be out of focus when you're doing with shutter speed. That's not true. There's no way that shutter speed affects focus, but what shutter speed does affect is motion blur. And to an untrained eye, you might not notice the difference between a shot that's like wildly out of focus or a shot that just was very motion blurry. It might be hard to tell the difference. I can tell the difference, like, in a second. But if you lower your shutter speed and you're shooting something that's moving, then for the amount of time that shutter was open, and whatever was moving will be blurred. That is something I cover in depth in my DSLR basic settings tutorial. I talk about shutter speed, I talk about f-stop, talk about ISO, I talk about depth of field. I think it was because there was movement. So if the shot was bad because of the movement, then it was the shutter speed. The suspect, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because with a video camera, you cannot go lower than the frame rate in terms of shutter speed. So if you're shooting at 30 frames a second, the typical shutter speed, your 180-degree shutter, the standard shutter speed for 30 frames a second is 1/60th of a second. You just double the frame rate. So you have 30 frames a second, double that to 60, 1/60. That's your shutter speed for 30 frames a second. Most video cameras, if you were to lower the shutter speed, a slower shutter speed, you cannot physically go lower than the frame rate. If the frame rate is 30 frames a second, then you're only going to be able to go as slow as 1/30th of a second. And 1/30th of a second is still pretty fast. It's not going to really blur things unless the camera has like a button that puts it into like super slow shutter, or you went into the menus and you found like super slow shutter buttons. Then you have to like really find a lot of cameras don't even have that feature. But the ones that do is, yes, then you can go in and do like 12 frames, 1/12th of a second, 1/5 of a second, 1 second. And in those situations, it looks very strange on video because remember, you're shooting in 30 frames a second, but the shutter is one second long. So you start to get these really weird shots. It's hard to accidentally turn that on. Most cameras I know, if you're adjusting the shutter speed and you get down to like whatever the frame rate is, 1/30th of a second, it won't go lower. You have to like actively go in and turn on a slow shutter setting. Maybe the camera that you're using, someone else used it before you and turned on that setting and you didn't know, and you went to mess with the shutter and it threw it off. That could be the case. But for the most part, that setting is not even on every camera. And if it does have most of the time, that feature is not even part of a camera's features. And if it is a feature that the camera has, it's usually turned off by default. You have to go into the menus and turn that on. So I said I was going to edit for another half hour, and I ended up talking for 20 minutes. Jerk, taking pictures of aquarium fish is difficult because of the motion blur. I also use my phone camera, lol. The glare is a pain sometimes too. Yeah, I could talk about that. Aquariums are usually really low lit. There's really not a lot of light in aquariums. And if you can't use a flash, because if you use a flash, the light's just going to bounce off of the glass, and you're just going to get a white reflection bouncing back at you. So, yeah. And since it is such low light in an aquarium, then yeah, usually it's very difficult to take a picture of the fish because the camera wants to like lower the shutter speed. In terms of the glare, if you're just talking about regular ambient light glare, I would suggest, if you can, gently put your phone directly up against the glass, like touch your phone's camera lens to the glass, because then that's this equivalent to like being next to a glass outside and going like this. You know how you do that when it's really bright outside, you want to look inside a building that has a glass window, you kind of go up to it and you go like this. That's the same thing as if you take your camera's lens and just touch it to the glass. Don't tap on the glass. Obviously, you don't want to disrupt the fish or disturb the fish, but that should work. The flash will still not work. The flash, if you try to do that and take a flash, the flash will just reflect off of all of the glass and shine a flare right back into the lens. But that's a good tip you can use, where if you just gently put... The problem with doing it that way is, once you do it like that, then you can only shoot what's right there. If the fish is over there, that's not going to work because now you're at an angle to the glass. But if it just so happens that like a fish is coming, I would put the camera up against the glass and just wait till that fish goes right in front of you, take the picture then. That's what I would do. Taking notes. Good, Jerk, good. Steve taught me everything I know. He's incredible. Thanks, Pat. I have. That's a true statement. If you guys didn't know, Boulevard Bullies is a wrestling gonzo journalist channel, platform, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, of my good friend Pat. And how long ago was it? A couple of years ago, he had a bunch of footage and we edited it together. And I taught you how to edit it. Give me 1 second. I'm going to just take a sip. I use this because if I spill it, it won't mess everything up. So this might be an obtuse question. I love obtuse questions. But for the footage you're currently editing, was the sound edited / mastered by an audio person prior to import? No, it was not. And it probably could use some compression and EQ. I might do that at the end. We'll see. It sounds pretty good. No, what you're listening to right now is basically the audio raw out of the cameras. Did I do any? Let me see. Actually, I know what to do. If I double click it and I go over to effects controls, yeah, there's no effects on it at all. There's nothing. Is there any gain on it? There's not even gain on it. Yeah, this audio has not been touched in any way. What you are hearing is directly out of the cameras. I believe what we did was... Oh, no, it's directly off of the Zoom. Because you can see it says Zoom. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, so these were recorded separately on our Zoom H6. It's a 4-channel recorder. So we had lavaliers, me in one channel, Rita in another channel, Cody in another channel. And then I synced it up with all these cameras in a separate... at an earlier date. And what you're listening to is like unaffected audio right out of the gate. So I made sure that like they were on and that they sounded good, and we did a lot of checks and tests, and I was like, ha ha ha, like check, and I like leveled it out pretty good. but like we didn't. The only people in the room were the three of us on that couch, but we had monitors set up. So we had a monitor for the wide, we had a monitor for Cody, a monitor for Steve's shot. So we all on the couch could look over and see our shots, but there was no camera operators, there's no sound operators. So if while we were recording, one of our lavaliers died, we would have lost that audio. But the good news is that we were so close to each other that like it could have been fixed. Thank God we didn't need to fix it. The Zoom H6, there's no N, it's just H6, but that's fine. Thank you so much, says Chetta. I followed you on Twitter. I don't have a Twitter. Like, does Rethink have a Twitter? We should, if Rethink does have a Twitter, we don't use it often at all. I would say follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitch. As you can see right here, the full replay of this stream is going to go live on Rethink Films YouTube page, so subscribe there as well. My full name is Eriqueta. Cool. I got to change that on here. This is a great resource for me starting out my career. Awesome. Please tell your friends. I'm going to be streaming every Monday and Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's exactly, you're here day one. So you're going to, hopefully as the months go on, you're going to be like my oldest fans. So please come. Yeah, please tell people, spread the word. I followed Dakasa Film. I'll give Instagram a follow. Great. Thank you so much. On Instagram, do Rethink Films. I don't have a Dakasa Film Instagram. I just have my personal one and it's private. Boulevard Bully. Steve taught me everything I know. He's incredible. 3 years at least. Taught me how to edit and shoot and light. I still suck. He's amazing. Lisa says, wow, this audio is straight out of the camera. Yes, it is. Well, it's not out of the camera. It's out of the Zoom. Yeah, you said, oh, the Zoom. Yeah, let's listen to it.
6 hampers of gear and 20 people for the...
I'm going to kill the desktop audio for a second. So I'm going to play the things, but I'm going to kill the desktop audio so you're not going to hear anything. So I was playing, but you can't hear it. I should lower myself too, but look over here on blocking it. Hang on, let me, I'm going to turn myself off for a second. So look over here at the audio levels. You see, it's peaking at 18. Now it's really up here, here, here. It's like all over the place. That's really loud. So at like the softest, it's around negative 14 dB. Let me turn myself back on. So that's not good. There's a huge difference between when we're all talking at like a standard level, it's around like negative 14. But when we all laugh, it's actually peaking. It's actually going up to 0 or beyond. So what I'm going to eventually have to do is in audio, do something called compression. Compression in audio is very different from compression for video. Compression for video is eliminating redundant data so that the file size is reduced. And you can do that after the fact to footage, or you can do that in camera. And when you do it in camera, that's when you utilize a codec. So when you utilize a codec, the camera is taking in lots and lots of information, but if it recorded every pixel of every frame, it would be so much data that your memory card would fill up in a minute. So what it does is the codec is an algorithm that analyzes the frame and decides what is redundant, what part of the image is the same pixel to pixel to time, second to second to frame, it's the same value, it's the same value. So like why record why, if it's just black for 20 minutes, why we have to just keep that one pixel there and just leave it there for 20 minutes rather than continuing to refresh that pixel. That's compression on the video side. It eliminates redundant data and reduces the file size, whether it's in camera or post. You can do it, you can compress a large file. Can't go the other way around. Compression in audio is, you notice how like the lowest part was negative 14 and the highest is peaking. Compression is pushing those closer together. So the lowest part is going to be like negative 6 and the highest part is going to be like negative 5. So you compress it, but usually what ends up happening is like overall gain goes down here, but then you bump up the gain. So you get the difference between the lowest and the highest. You get that very close to each other. And then once that's the case, you bump it up so that it's gotta bump it up. Bump it up. You get it up to around 0 dB, maybe 2 dB, negative 2 dB, negative 3 dB maybe. That's where you want the audio for something like this, because it brings everyone's voice up. You can listen to it on your phone at like half volume, and it's still like crystal clear. You don't have to worry about anything. And I just learned how to do compression on audio like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I knew it, I dabbled in it, but I really like sat down and watched a tutorial about it, and I would suggest you do too. Because if I didn't learn how to do compression, I would have to go in to these 3 tracks of audio and do pen tools up, down, all the way through. It would take me so long. In fact, and that's what I did for the first episode of this. This is episode 2. Now that I know how to do compression, I can save 20 hours of work basically. So technically though, my audio engineer friend did tell me that like doing a pen tool and manually compressing is actually the best way to do it. You get a better quality sound and less mess ups. But when you have 40 minutes of footage in 3 tracks, I'm not going to do that. When you have a 2.5 minute song, yeah, that's good. But when you have this, it's just crazy. Richard, with the edited video, let me turn my desktop audio back on. With the edited video, Basics 101, I will be happy that I can show it to my students now. K through 12 challenges. Richard, I'm having trouble understanding you. With the edited video, Basics 101, DSLR basic settings, I will be happy that I can show that to my students now. Oh, wait, Richard, are you the one that bleeped it for me? I forgot that that was the case. Oh, nice. Now I recognize you. Sweet. So Richard is awesome. He reached out to me and he wanted to show my DSLR basic settings tutorial to his students, but I curse and I say a hard R, not the N word. I would never. But a hard R is the word retarded, which is a very controversial word. I no longer say it now, but 6 years ago when I filmed that, it was just something I used kind of frivolously to mean crazy. But since I said that at the time, I've gotten a lot of comments saying like, you can't say that word anymore. So I was very upset, and I really should go in and I really want to redo that whole video with like less cursing or no cursing. But Richard, actually, you downloaded the file and then you bleeped all the curses out yourself and then sent me that and then got rid of the hard R. And so that was nice of you. Thank you. And now he's showing it to his students. So that's super cool. Thank you for doing that. And thanks for being here. I'm sorry I forgot your name and that was you. But thank you. Yeah, Prince, the hard R. Remember last night? We were talking about the hard R last night and how people were interpreting it to mean another very bad word. But no, the hard R is not that bad word. Yeah. Well, you know what? I got barely any editing done, but I think I'm going to end the stream. Lisa Rose, I am working on a tutorial video and would like to refer to your channel and bits of the 3-point lighting video in the tutorial. This will be on YouTube. I'm working on a tutorial video and would like to refer to your channel and bits of the 3-point lighting video in the tutorial. I think that's fine. So long as you don't, as long as you don't just take the whole video and repost it, or I would say try to limit the clips that you use of the video. I would say limit those clips to like 1 minute to 2 minutes each. In other words, don't cut away to my 3-point lighting tutorial for more than like 1 minute or 1.5 minutes. If you can, I would say you can cut to it while you're talking or have it play in the screen as you're talking and then say, please go and check that out when you get the chance. But 3 to 5 seconds. Oh, that's fine. You don't need any permissions to do that. So long as whatever video you're making has commentary and it transforms my video into a new video that incorporates into your thing, then you actually can use it fair use. I mean, that's that's what copyright law is. That's what fair use is. So long as you make a transformative work, you should be fine. But if you were to take, a good chunk of it and post it unedited, or just take the video and post it as your own, which people have done. I've put claims out there to have those removed. Then as long as you're not doing that, that's fine. Urka Jerk, yeah. Taking pictures. Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you for realizing that about the Flash. Yeah, very true. Love you guys. I think I'm going to end it here. I mean, I'm a little upset that I didn't continue editing as much, but I think this is a great first stream. And, I'm going to be doing this twice a week forever, so it'll eventually get done. Even if I only work on it like 20 minutes a day, it'll eventually get done. So, let me cut back to this shot right here. Lisa Rose, thank you for the $2. Obviously, $1 of it will go to BLM. So thank you for that. And yeah. Keep in mind, once again, that this full replay is going to be live on youtube.com/rethinkfilms. So if you want to watch the whole replay of the stream again, and because if you didn't write notes fast enough, maybe, then it's going to be over there. So it's not going to be on this channel. So go subscribe to youtube.com/rethinkfilms to be able to watch this full stream again. Yeah, if you're a Twitch person and you're here watching, please follow. Kind of get more followers there. If you're a YouTube person watching, please subscribe to be notified when I go live. I'm hoping that this knowledge and help is valuable to you. It seems like it is to a few people, so that's awesome. Just want to get more and more people who can realize that and join me. And trying to think of anything else. Yeah, subscribe, follow, come hang out. I'll see you Wednesday. Hopefully, you guys, if you're free on Wednesday, we'll do some more editing, or I can talk about photography. Get your questions ready. I'm happy to keep seeing you guys in the chat. Thank you so much. I'll shout out Lisa Rose, Chetta. You said your name was Eriqueta. I hope I'm saying that right. Richard, thank you for showing up. There was Martin. There was Oliver. Ryan Greer. Amanita, my good friend. Martin. Sheku came to check out this stuff. I'm just going back to the chat. That's awesome. Alexa was the first comment, which is cool. And in the chat on Twitch, we had one person, Flomzy. I don't know who that is, but hello. But okay. It's been so fun, so fun streaming with you guys and girls. Please come back again. Come back every time. Come back as often as you can. I'm going to be doing this Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Thanks, Pat. Thank you. So until then, I just want to say happy filmmaking. Peace. You're welcome, Lisa. You ruined my ending. It's okay. Happy filmmaking. Peace. See you next time.